Hey, listdaily.com. It's Manu Kalkopian here, joined by Kristian Segerstrale and Krul from Vainglory. They're here at E3, ready to announce their new activation with Samsung. Kristian, tell us about it.
Yeah, so we're announcing our support for the Vulkan graphics API by Samsung on the Samsung Galaxy S7, which basically provides about a 30% performance improvement for Vainglory on their devices, which is a big deal.
And Samsung is really getting into the mobile space. We know their efforts into VR. How are they really championing mobile esports now with Vainglory?
Well, so for starters, they're hosting a large invitational tournament here at E3. So actually you have one of the top European teams, G2 eSports, one of the top North American teams, Team Solomed, the top Korean team, Invincible Armada, as well as the Chinese champions, Team Hunters, all duking it out here over the next 2 days on our esports stage, shared here with Samsung. So it's pretty exciting.
And Samsung is here doing the Vulkan gaming experience. For anyone that doesn't know what the Vulkan gaming experience is about, how would you describe that?
Well, in sort of from a gamer terms perspective, it's just faster performance. Tommy may have some deeper technical insight into these things, but fundamentally it's about things being more beautiful, faster, and your battery lasting longer.
Now, Tommy, you mentioned earlier about the technical side of things and how the improvements are made. How are you really building out the platform from that regard?
So Vulkan is really a replacement for the old graphics API. So a lot of old phones used OpenGL, and with this phone we're actually able to use Vulkan to go really close to the hardware. And this gives us about a 30% increase in rendering performance. And not only that, we also get actually more battery life and better responsiveness out of it. So that's a great deal. That's a really big deal for a competitive game like ours.
And the competitive game is growing in popularity over the last few months. You recently had the show, the tournament in Los Angeles as well. Talk to us a little about that and how that went.
Yeah, so the Spring Season Championships just took place, you're right. The European Championships were just this last weekend in Berlin. The weekend before, we had the North America Championships in Hollywood, and actually at the same time as the Korean Championships took place. So it's really been fun to see how the Vainglory competitive scene has truly exploded over the past 6 months, with now millions of players playing the game, but also millions of players now watching the game every month.
And as each tournament goes and the game grows with its players as well, what are you most getting out of the experience and kind of learning to build out the capability as well?
Well, so what's so exciting about Vainglory is that we're building for the touchscreen generation the kind of real-time multiplayer experiences that we grew up with on PC. And it's really fun because this generation has so far been, if you like, stuck with 3-minute play. It's predominantly 3 or 4 minute play sessions. And with Vainglory, for the first time, we're able to let people group up into teams, start practicing together, start playing in minor tournaments, qualify for major tournaments, and ultimately become champions. And that sort of community-led, if you like, evolution of gaming in the same way as we've seen on PC is something completely new on touchscreen. So we're learning new things every day, and as a company we are completely community-focused in that we figure out how do we deliver a better experience, a better game, but also a better viewing experience, as well as just a better community experience every day.
Now, we're here at E3. Everyone is enthralled by the eSports phenomenon. It's here, it's live, but a lot of people might not know about the mobile eSports side of things too. How do you see mobile eSports developing in the next few years, and what type of role would you like Vainglory to have in that?
Well, so eSports, as you say, is actually has been quite large for some time on PC as the dominant platform. It's only been talked about more recently because it's been a fairly sort of an insular community in some ways until fairly recently, and right now it's, as you say, become something that people talk an awful lot about. What's exciting about mobile is that to date there hasn't really been the kind of games where you can team up with friends and you can play competitively, which is sort of balanced and designed for competitive play from the start. So Vainglory is very much a pioneer in that sense, and we've just been delighted at how quickly the competitive scene has grown. We would like to emphasize though that in some ways esports is the consequence of a healthy, growing game with a competitive edge to it. And that's the way we've thought about it always. We try to create a game and an experience that's really conducive to competitive play. And then if we do it right, the competitive community will rise. And then we do our best to support it, if that makes sense. The potential prospects for esports on touchscreens are enormous. Because if you think about the biggest esports in the world, the biggest communities of hundreds of millions of people, they are still formed off the back of an install base of gaming PCs of only maybe 700 million or so. Now today you have more than 3 billion touchscreens in the market, and predominantly, frankly, people who just don't have access to a PC or a console. So it's just so much easier to get into that it could potentially provide a very significant growth driver for the esports industry as a whole, when we as content creators or as publishers for the touchscreen competitive games really get it right with the community, and that's something that we work hard on. The way we think about it, it's a little bit like the difference between ice hockey and something like soccer. Like if you have access to all the expensive equipment like skates and an ice rink and all the stuff that you have to wear, ice hockey is really fantastic. But the vast majority of the world doesn't. So for soccer you only need a ball. And that's really why we're so excited about touchscreen esports.
And you mentioned about that growth and non-endemic brands like Samsung, and you see a lot of brands like T-Mobile, for example, getting into esports now as well. And you've worked with a lot of brands with Vainglory. What is your message to the brands out there that want to get involved with esports to help that market grow? How do you think that's the right way to get into esports?
Yeah, so esports is an exploding phenomenon across the board. But esports is also arguably one of the most authentic interactions between communities. So you have to be very careful as a brand. How do you insert yourself in an authentic way into that? And the best way, in our opinion, some of the best ways are frankly to team up with teams and tournament organizers in a way where you are authentically part of that community, as opposed to trying to shove a message down the throats of a community that is very highly often skeptical of, if you like, traditional marketing or traditional advertising. And the last thing I will say is that the most important thing about the esports community is that it is typically all the tastemakers. They are the people that, you know, everyone has a friend that you call to ask what phone should I buy, or what PC should I buy, or what game should I buy. Well, that is also the same friend that's into esports. So that's why if you find a way to connect to the esports community, it can be a very, very valuable thing for a brand across the board.
And any other closing messages? Anything perhaps that you'd like to mention that we didn't speak about?
Well, tune into twitch.tv/Vainglory to check out the tournament this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. Should be some spectacular Vainglory being played all afternoon, both days. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter @Vainglory.
Tommy?
We've only started using Vulkan about 2 months ago. Like, I'm very excited what this is going to mean for the future of mobile gaming.
Yeah. Fantastic. There you have it, guys. Thank you.